Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode 39 of the Office Hours podcast. Today, we have back Mo, and he brought us a couple of questions from our listeners. And those questions were how much time should you spend trying to figure out the nature of the problem you're dealing with before you come up with your coding buddy or your senior on a team and ask for their help? We spend a little bit of time on that, figuring out, the pros and cons of getting people quick and easy answers versus letting them, sweat a little bit and trying to find a solution. And the other question was how to find motivation for doing side projects. And I think the outcome of that was maybe not as exact of an answer to the specifically the question as it was stated, but something a little bit different. So, if you're interested to figure out what it was, please stick around, and I hope you enjoy what's about to follow. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode 39 of the Office Hours podcast. We're happy to have Mo back on a show, and without further ado, let's hear what Mo has for us. Hey, Mo, how's it going?
So, over the past couple episodes, we've been discussing questions from mostly your colleagues and random questions that I've come across. But I found some questions that I would like to discuss with you today. Um, yeah, this is interesting, and I think maybe we might have talked a bit about it before in previous episodes. So, when should I keep trying on my own? And when is it best to ask for help? I'll let you go.
Yeah, sure. No, that's actually a good question because I've seen it a bunch of times, especially with more junior developers, is that they really tend to get in the weeds when looking for answers for things. And sort of the first promising answer, they'll like sort of stick with it and keep unraveling the thread until it gets them so far where they weren't expecting to go that they don't even know what the hell they're looking for anymore. It's like one thing leads to another. Like when you find some solution and it kind of works for you, but you have this error and you start Googling the error and it gives you something else and you try this other thing and then some other error pops up and you kind of just hop from one thing to another. And then in the end, when they finally exhaust all hope and they come to me, I look at it, it's like, how the hell did you manage to get here? This is like so far removed
Mhm.
from what needed to be done, right? And it's like, I wish that you would have come in earlier. That happened quite a lot because that first promise of an answer, it feels too good. I think that people don't have a skill to just evaluate it quickly, and if it doesn't pan out in a reasonable amount of time, is to just discard it and look for something else. But I guess the question is, what is that reasonable amount of time, right? Because it's like, is 15-minute reasonable? Is like an hour or half a day reasonable? Like where do we draw the line? And I think potentially that the more junior you are, the sooner you should ask. Not immediately. Like you should spend some effort. And maybe even not sticking with just one solution. Like instead of spending an hour on one solution, maybe spend 15 minutes each on four solutions. And if none pan out, then at least you have some conversation starter. Like if you come to me and it's like, hey, I tried these four things, none of them worked. Maybe one of them was the right path. It just didn't quite get there versus, oh, I picked some rabbit hole and I was digging at it for 3 hours and I didn't end up anywhere. And it's like, yeah, that's because, you picked the wrong solution to the problem you were having, right? And like the other thing that kind of grows out of it that is also very often encountered is what's being called an XY problem, which can be described as I have a problem X. In attempting to solve this problem, I have arrived at a symptom Y, and now I'm asking people about what to do with the symptom Y without disclosing what the problem X was. And now people are like, that's odd. Like, why are you trying to do this? Right? Like, because they don't understand that your original problem is not actually solving the symptom Y. Your original problem is the problem X, right? So it kind of throws everybody for a loop because they don't understand what you're trying to do. So one of my first questions usually to people that come to me and say, "Hey, I'm trying to do this thing to and it doesn't work." I'm like, "What exactly are you trying to do?" So I understand that you're dealing with this particular library or whatever, but what was the original thing that you were trying to do? Because maybe you're in that mode where you're asking for a question for the wrong solution and not the question about the actual problem. So that's kind of my long and short of it.
Yeah, I mean, I I see where like your point of view. Just like for me, every time like we talk about something like this or like in a conversation about like this stuff like this, I feel like I might have a slightly different opinion about it. Just because um maybe how the teams that I have been set up so far in different teams. And I noticed that actually at the end of the day, there's only one thing I say, like know when know when and how to ask your questions. Because the questions that you ask are always an indication of how you think, and also it reflects on you moving forward in this position. Because like I said, like developers are our industry is an industry with a lot of people with big egos, and everybody seems to think of themselves as the smartest person. So you could go as a junior to think like, oh, you can get to like ask anybody any question, or like feel free and like just say what the way you're thinking about it, just ask the question. Fine, you might be lucky and you might be in a team that is so warm and like everybody just wants to help and just see you as like, oh, the junior developer that everybody wants to help. But honestly, I think it will be as just out of fear of sounding like scary. I think it might be really close to winning a jackpot to be in such a team like this these days, especially with the fact that everybody works from home and you would have to ping someone literally. And the whole, can you hear me? Do you hear me? Sometimes some people don't even want to be on the call. So you might really be bothering someone, right? So um I guess like my advice in this kind of thing is like do good research. I think the part of like one big part of our job is research. Like the answer is somewhere, you know. But there are some cases where like you make decisions that can affect a lot of things. Say, for example, if you're working in a task and you have a question, a technical question about like the framework or like the language, of course you can research a bit and find something that works. You have code review at the end of the day. If your code doesn't work, someone is going to tell you like, oh, this is going to break something. And you probably learn from this because at least like you've put an effort and it sticks to your brain when you do the rework yourself and like you learn more from this. But to think that you can go ask questions about like, oh, how do you set up for example, if you want to move data to the store somewhere, like, technical questions, I think you will only get this opportunity for a while, like the honeymoon period, like, like the period where you just got it. And you don't want to overstay your welcome, overuse your privilege. So I would say spend that cash wisely, just don't overspend it and also try to put effort to learn yourself. This is where I feel, this is what I feel, but I guess like some people might just get lucky and be in a team where like everybody wants to help. And yeah, I guess in that case, then you can use your cash as much as you want. So yeah, this is what I have to say about this because
Yeah.
I know it's tricky. So
Yeah. I
this
think
is
there's something to be said from the perspective of a person who's answering those questions is that, and I've been guilty of it myself too, is that the whole giving a man a fish versus teaching men to fish mentality.
Mhm.
It's like giving them an answer too quickly. See, there's like two competing narratives. One of them is we have to ship something quickly. This person has been assigned their tasks and their points, and if they're spending too much time doing it, they're slowing everybody down and they're delaying progress for the team overall. So the sooner you're unblocking them, the better. On the other hand, if you just give them the fish, they never learn how to fish themselves. So next time, instead of knowing how to approach searching for that information, they'll just come to you because it worked out really well last time.
Yeah.
And I still have a lot of problems with that myself. Is that how do you okay? Like it's one thing like as a junior, like how do you ask good questions and like how much time should you spend researching before you defer to somebody else? Okay, fair enough. Like if you don't know anything, ask sooner. The more you know, the longer you can take figuring things out because now you'll have the skill to distinguish between true leads and red herrings when you're searching for for your answers. But from a person giving those answers, it's like how much guidance over what period of time am I willing to provide to ensure maximum growth, but at the same time balance it with the fact that there's only so many hours in a day and there's only so many days in a sprint and stuff needs to be delivered by the end of the deadline, right?
Mhm.
That's probably even a harder one because there's just so many variables there. Like what do you value more as an organization at any given time? Growing the skill level of your employees or shipping features on time or maybe a little bit of both. And you can also create this situation which is a little bit unhealthy, whereas like people are so used to just answers that you provide all the time that they never choose to learn anything. And then, they're kind of ruined in a sense because, they're just intermediary between somebody else's answer and typing them into your code editor of choice in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a complex problem for which I think it's just a continuous improvement. You have to be able to understand when this happens and start changing the expectations toward self-reliance. But you can't just like, you can't just throw somebody out in the middle of a lake and be like, sink or swim, not my problem, right? That's not good either for somebody trying to, figure out what they're doing and where they are and, how this whole thing works. Unless basically it's a hiring thing. Like if you hire people who have been thrown out of a lake by somebody else before and they know what to do, then hey, well, you don't have that problem anymore. They're self-sufficient already. Maybe they need some help for local specifics that you have, but not with the overall approach of, hey, how do I solve this problem? Which then turns into a question of like, well, how do I identify people like that during the interview stage? That would be a good question to ask.
Yeah. This is actually things people look out for in interviews these days. I know, I mean, it depends also. It depends. And this is what brings the confusion. Like, I think it depends on from my point of view, I think it depends on like the level that you're hiring for as well. Some people say, some company say like, oh, we want like fresh out of school, fresh graduates, and like we want to train them, give them our culture, and like keep them, growing with us here. And some companies would say, oh, we want like 1 year, 2 years experience, but still junior, just because these people we need less like resources to settle and to become productive. They can get like a bit faster. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to personality too, and also habit. Like you said, like if you give someone help every time, they get used to it, and then they come to you every time. Like I think there was a time like I was sharing like a culture that I had in the company, or I have in my company right now. Like in my company, where I work, we have a body system, and like so you get a body, and like you get to ask the questions to your body. But I think at some point, like there's a winning period, like period where like you are not longer expected to go as often. So I think this is the part where you start like growing as a developer yourself, because honestly, the way I say it is that you can't really break that much things except you have the ability to merge. So someone is gonna see what you did, and like someone is going to, hopefully somebody catches what you're doing, because I don't expect that if you're starting out, you'll be responsible for that large kind of feature anyway. So like let's say you're fixing bugs and small things. What's the worst that can happen? Like, you know, we'll see. Except you work in a company where they give you the opportunity to merge your own codes directly. And yeah, now that would be wild. So anyway, so yeah, I just I just think like it comes down to personality, because some people would rather find someone to help them than actually like figure it out themselves and put in some effort, just because it's easier and it's safer
Yeah,
and all.
yeah.
But anyway.
It's kind of like that meme. I don't always test my code, but when I do it in production.
Yeah, that would
Yeah,
be
yeah,
really nice.
yeah,
You will get a quick feedback
yeah. Very
in
quick
a good
feedback.
way.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, that's true. So sometimes, sometimes I have these whenever I help people, occasionally I get this question. It's like, how come I have the idea of what to do to figure this out and you don't? Like, what is the big deal here? Like, how come you can't identify the steps that you need to go through? And the funny thing is, first step is usually read the goddamn error message thoroughly. Thoroughly read the error
Yeah.
message and see what it tells
Hmm.
you, and then do something. Because sometimes, like, okay, I understand, like, most juniors don't have the habit of reading the error message. I've seen it time and time again. The answer is like staring them right in the face. It's a little bit obscure because error messages are big and there's a stack trace and they're hard to read, and it's a skill that you have to develop to be able to glance at it and figure out the pertinent part and say, that's the part that's failing. That's what you need to be looking at. So they come in, it's like, hey, this thing is not working. So you read the error message, it's like, well, there it is. It just tells you exactly what's wrong. So have you looked at that? No. Okay, well, read the error message next time. So that's like step one. But then still, sometimes, something happens and it's like, well, if you didn't have an opportunity to ask anyone, what would you do here? And it kind of feels like people give up too soon. But, the original question was, how long should they be spending in trying to figure out what the hell's going on, right? But I think it's
Yeah.
mostly guided. I guess for juniors it might be harder because they don't have this mechanism which tells them if they're on the right path or not. Because I don't know, at this point in time, if I'm diagnosing bugs, I kind of get a hunch if I'm moving in the right direction. So it's more
Yeah.
it's innate now. I can't verbalize it necessarily. I just follow a thread, and it's like, and eventually I get to the answer. But I see a lot of times that people don't even attempt to follow the thread. They just like, doesn't work, I'm gonna bounce it over the wall and get somebody else to solve it. So that's probably, as you said, it's excusable during the honeymoon period.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
after,
it's
but
true.
that's the thing too, because that during that period is when you set that expectation of providing easy answers, easy correct answers right away. So If you train people, if you essentially condition people to just do that, then that's on you or on me in this case, because I have a feeling that I might have done that a bunch before and probably am doing now and likely will do in the future too.
Yeah, you know, there is something that I wanted to share about this particular question. In summary, what I'm trying to say at the end of everything is put the best effort that you can before you go ask someone, so that there will be proof that you have tried and you can actually like earn respect as you go. However, there are other things that I've learned. For example, I'm going to share an experience. I worked somewhere, I think it was a media company, and there was someone that we were working together at the time. Like he had a, it wasn't a mentor. It was just like someone who was supposed to be his go-to person at the company. And this person shared table with the rest of us. So like sometimes we will talk about like different things. And I noticed that the frequency of how this person was talking about, oh, like this person talks, asked me these questions, that questions. And at one time I got to talk to this person, like, just together how things are going and all. What I learned from our conversation was that I don't think this person did not know how to solve most of the problems that he was asking. I think there's also this fear factor of like, especially when you're just starting out, you have that anxiety of doing, first of all, you want to do the right thing. And some people come with a perfectionist mentality. Like, you don't want to be caught with bad codes. You don't want to be seen with like mistakes. So like you put a lot of pressure on yourself to make sure that whatever you're putting out has to be like the best. But if you're just starting from the beginning, I think it's okay to feel comfortable with mistakes. Like, I think everyone would know if you make mistakes, and you only get to make them one time if you are really paying attention. It's not like it stays with you. And to be honest, even even as we all grow further in our careers, as a software engineer, software developer, however you choose to call yourself, you you will always make mistakes. Like, it's normal. But the thing is, you have to learn from them. Like, I'm not saying like you will always, you are susceptible. How do you say that
Susceptible.
word? Susceptible to mistakes for sure. So I don't think like if you spend a lot of your energy like just being afraid of making these mistakes, and then you in turn try to ask someone else answers or solutions to your problems just so that the solution can be their
Yeah.
responsibility and it's not your
Delegating
responsibility.
responsibility, exactly.
Yeah, so like if anyone asks you like, oh, why did you do this way, and then you just go like, yeah, so person said I should do this, and then now you might you might be able to get away with things like this for a while, but in the long run, when decisions are being made at the round table, it kind of doesn't put you in a good position because you have not been practicing how to make harder decisions, which will in turn be like your leverage for growing in that position, because the tougher the decisions that you make, I think, is what will put you in like a limelight for like promotions or like stuff like this, like recognitions or stuff like this. So like you need to train yourself. I think it's part of like
But they
it's
also
one
have
thing
to
that
be they also have to be tough right decisions. Because if they're tough
yeah.
wrong decisions, that's not going to work
Yeah,
out too well.
yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, you need to have some respect for your own position there, Like you are here because you want to make a difference, you want to contribute, and don't be afraid. I noticed like one thing that I noticed was just like the anxiety part and the fact that people might be afraid of like being responsible for their own decisions, so they try to make it someone else's responsibility,
Yeah.
and that keeps them going to someone for help instead of like finding their own solutions. But
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
But I think that also in a lot of ways that is mediated by the the company culture, the actual company culture. Like
Mm-hmm.
how free are you to make mistakes? Like how much latitude you have? What are the consequences are going to be? How many layers of reasonable protections are there between you committing something and company losing ungodly amounts of money, right? If that happens. Because as I said, if you're an intern and you're given push to deploy rights on the repository, that's going to be interesting. You're going to learn a lot of things really quickly. Whether you survive those lessons is more of a
Yeah,
question. But I don't
that
know.
would be
There's
fantastic.
like the story going around,
Mm-hmm.
probably well known. I don't remember the origins, but everybody reposted to LinkedIn like once every 3 months anyway. About some guy working, I think, for Walmart, and he like made some deal that lost company $10 million or something. And when he expected to be fired, his superior said, "Well, we just paid 10 millions to train you, so why would we let you go now? It's been too expensive for us to just kind of get rid of that
Yeah,
experience entirely, right?" So in some companies,
good.
if you screw something up, you can get like a very, very negative reaction to it, which will put you on a defensive, and you'd rather be covering your ass rather than, boldly be daring to do something cool. So it's not entirely just to the person themselves, but the atmospheres that surrounds them to a certain degree. So,
Very true.
and I guess
Very
if you're a
true.
newcomer, like you can identify those things. Like if do you have code review? Do you have, QA? Do you have backups? Like if anything goes really, really sideways, can they just actually like restore from a backup and lose,
Yeah.
half a day versus the whole thing? I was remember reading recently that due to some weird cloud misconfiguration, Google just deleted some pension fund
Mm-hmm.
off their
I
system
heard about that too.
entirely, and it's like, whoops. It wasn't
Yeah.
even through their own doing, from what I understand. It just like some automated system discovered some weird quirk in the configuration. It's like, that can't be right. Nuked off the face of the earth. Well, you know
Fantastic.
yeah. Good luck.
Yeah. Someone will probably get in trouble for that. But anyway. Yeah. So I guess yeah, we kind of answered the question, and hopefully the answer that this person is really looking for will be somewhere in everything we said about this. But I guess just to summarize, spend your cash wisely while you still have it in your honeymoon period,
Yeah.
and don't
Don't learn acquired helplessness.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So the next question was about personal projects. Um, the question is, how do you find the motivation to do them?
To do the personal projects,
Yes.
it's an interesting one, because in the beginning of my career, I didn't have to ask myself that question. I was just so
Motivation.
motivated to do these projects, I was just doing them.
You know what? Yeah, this is true.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I think if you're in this industry day one and you have no motivation to do personal projects, you're either overexerted at work and you just fatigued, where you don't find anything outside of work even worthwhile doing. And these things can happen, right? It actually it could be, if you're completely unmotivated to do projects, maybe you just don't want to do projects. Maybe, you know, you just want to do your 9 to 5 and go do something else. But if you were in the habit of doing personal projects and now you find yourself unable to do so, okay, maybe your circumstances have changed. Maybe you found other creative outlets for yourself that you are happy, doing those things instead. Uh, like, I don't know, I could be writing code, maybe. maybe, but instead I'm very motivated to, film and record this podcast and do the cutting and editing and publishing and all of that. And,
Mm-hmm.
I feel fulfilled doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
if I were to be writing code, I might have to find motivation to write code at this point, just because, uh, I don't know what the reason is why I don't like writing code as much. And I still do occasionally. It's just not an all encompassing desire like it used to be. Or it's potentially a sign that you are near burnout. You know, in the previous episode, Ali and I we talked about how the dread. If you think about writing code and you feel dread, like you physically don't want to do it, it's a very very strong indicator of burnout. So maybe there's that. And going about burnout, which is a little bit unrelated to the question at hand, but I feel like it's worthwhile to mention it, is that you can still probably write code for work because there's a lot of motivators in doing that. Like you still want to be able to secure your paycheck at the end of the month. And as exhausted as
Yeah.
you are, you would
Mm-hmm.
still somehow force yourself to do the thing that you dread doing. The thing is like you can only do it for so long, and eventually it'll just snap and it's not going to be possible anymore. But if you're dreading even the side projects that you used to do for fun, to me, that might indicate very strongly that you're in some stage of burnout. So, gotta figure that out.
Yeah. This is true. It's true because yeah, there is a. I think the first thing, the way I look at it, the first thing is that the moment that you're doing anything that you think like was fun, and now you're getting paid to do this fun thing, there is already some like a layer of stress on it. Just getting paid to do. Because I remember when you said like you didn't need motivation as well. Like I remember, I would say like it's different now because I still do these things. It's just like it was different like earlier. I will just, even if I don't get paid to do it, I feel like on my vacation days, like I could take vacation just because I wanted to work on my side project. This is just, now that I'm thinking back at it, I don't know if that was a even good thing to do, if it was smart at all. So like, so like, yeah, it was just like everything you wanted to do. Like this is just it. But I feel what I noticed is that as time went by, I feel like I realized that there is more outside of work than just code. Like I have other things that I want to do in my life, like that are equally important. And not that finding code project like to do is like difficult or like it's not important. It's just like life comes at you and like you just have like different other things. Like you said, the podcast, you know, if anything happens, like you have another project like right now, like there are things that might take your mind away. But I think in terms of motivation to really answer the question, I think you have to ask yourself like what's important, because when you're starting out, I imagine like this is one advice that I always give also as well. Like I feel like when you're starting out in this industry, your 9 to 5 may not be the place where you are actually learning. You you might get to learn about how the company does certain things, like in the code base, like the code culture, like how work is going on. But to really know about the framework and like to really learn, you need extra hours outside of work. And this is where you get to make all your silly mistakes, like because then it's in this moment that you're working without pressure. Not whatever you do on your machine, this is you. Like, this is your thing to handle. So you can feel free to learn as much as possible. So I think this is where you find your motivation, like the need to learn. For example, I think if you join a new team and you're using a different framework, let's say like for example, you, let's say maybe you start to use like Angular, or like maybe you use like I think you probably want to, put a few minutes or like a few times just to like, brush up like stuff. I think you mentioned that you've not used it in a long time, so I'm just using this as an example. Even myself, like I feel like if I get outside of like the regular Ruby and Angular environment right now, yeah, yeah, there will be, I might need some time outside of work to get familiar and like to do certain things, like get comfortable, because this will be like training for workday. So anyway, this is just how I see it. And this is my motivation. I think for me, I like to know what I'm doing. I like when people ask me questions about my code, I know exactly why I did what I did. And um, I'm not just saying, oh, because this is what we used to do, because people have like these answers like, oh, this is just like in the code base, this is an example of it in the code base. But I want to be able to answer this kind of questions like, yeah, this is the reason why it should be done this way, and stuff like this. So I guess for me, my motivation would be being having good knowledge about what I'm doing, and also to be able to improve the quality of my work generally. So this is my own motivation, but everybody would have their own motivation. For example, your motivation might be because you want to have a software that you can sell. Because you know what, Vasili, like I learned that recently, people, I think there is now a lot of things that you can do that you don't really need to have like, anyway, maybe this is a conversation outside of here. but, but yeah, like some people can now commercialize their side project, and this is getting a lot of grounds, especially with all these like innovations at Google and all. Like what used to be like a lot of like issues seems simple these days. So yeah, this could be your motivation just to have a something that ends up working for you.
I think
So
for side projects, you want internal motivation. You don't want external
yeah,
motivation. Like doing your work is an external motivation. Like if you don't do your work, you get fired, you don't get paid, you can't afford your lifestyle. That's an external motivation.
yeah,
Having an internal motivation is like, I work on this project because I can't imagine not working on this project right now. Like the word motivation doesn't even enter the picture, right? I think when you start talking about motivation is actually when you're starting to lose interest in the thing you're doing, or you're starting to lose the resources to continue on the thing you're doing. Your brain is very averse of losing energy for weird reasons, and if you're learning, if you're acquiring new skills, if and also maybe it can be correlated to something that we talked about previously, where at the very early stages of your development career, you're like in that constant endorphin dopamine loop where you get tiny small wins often, all the time, at the very early stages, because you're solving simple problems that have specific and definite solutions that don't take too long to come up with. So you're always like, okay, I got this, I got this, I got this, I got this. But as you progress further, those become fewer and far between. Like to have an actual big win where you can sit down and be like, yeah, like those don't come by that often, right? And so if you're used to that kind of response where you just get rewarded for these tiny things will not give you such a response anymore. You actually have to really sweat for it. And that takes a lot of effort, and that takes a lot of effort where you don't necessarily know when the outcome is going to be. And that can be demotivating because now you're working toward a goal where you don't necessarily know when the outcome is going to come, if at all. And if it's going to be a positive outcome or negative outcome. So like now anxiety can enter the picture, like all of these other things, right? And so
yeah,
maybe that's why now I'm sort of analyzing my own situations. Like the things with the podcast where I'm a complete, well, not complete, but pretty close to complete a beginner. It's those small problems that I have to be solving that I can solve quickly, right? Where I can get that immediate
Mm-hmm.
feedback response, right? I nowhere near something huge where there's a lot of uncertainty and other things that come with it, right? So yeah, it's an interesting situation, I guess. It'll be interesting to see
Yeah,
what comes of
yeah,
it. You know,
yeah.
I was just recently thinking that actually, let me just take a quick look at the calendar here. But in 3.5 weeks, it will be 1 year since we've started doing this.
Really?
Yes,
Woo!
the first recording is I
Interesting.
believe that was done on June 12th last year,
Ah,
and
interesting.
we're episode 39, so we're not gonna fit 52 to have one per week, which is fine, but it's pretty damn close to having one a week, right? So it has been a year.
Yeah,
Unrelated
that's
to the
good.
conversation that we've been having, I
Yeah.
just thought it would be interesting. Like we're getting close to an anniversary. And
Yeah,
then after
it's
that,
indeed.
we will be pretty close to the 50 episode marker that we've set out to do in the very
Mm-hmm.
beginning. So, you know, it's closer now. We're like way closer to it now than we were when we set out that goal for ourselves. So,
Yeah, this is good.
yeah.
This is actually unrelated, but really good. Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Anyway.
we have to do something special for it. Maybe wear
Yeah,
silly hats.
yeah, that's a good idea. Silly hat. You know what? I'll think of stuff. But yeah, yeah. I think I understand where you're coming from, and I completely agree with this, especially with the past. Like, I think one time, I think you probably remember this. There was a time we were talking about how I didn't get enough sleep because I was
Working so
working a lot,
much. Yeah.
working a lot, and and then I was complaining to you about how like during the day like you get like um you don't even feel that much productive after a while because you think you're staying awake. And anyway, this whole scenario was the time when we were talking about burnouts, and you told me how like your experience with this and like stuff like this. And I think yeah, it's really big, and sometimes we forget about this. And to be honest, I feel like in our industry for developers, I think the better quality of sleep you get, the better the quality of work you do. I don't know, but yeah, maybe nobody should quote me, but I genuinely think it's related
No, I think it's
because
very true. And it's
so
like the better quality of sleep you get, the better workouts in physical sense you're gonna have, and you know,
yeah.
better mental clarity. It's so many things are underpinned by quality sleep, and people tend to
Mhm.
completely neglect it. But it's hard. It's hard. So many distractions, you know,
Yeah.
and it's a constant struggle, constant battle with
Yeah.
getting enough sleep.
Yeah. Anyway, I was I was gonna say like even though like you might want to find all these like projects to do, in my opinion, what I would suggest is stuff like, you know, to maybe there is a lot of like these open source projects these days where you actually get to learn and you don't get in this cycle of tutorials because sometimes I notice like some people say like they're doing like side project, and I might have been guilty of this once in my experience in my own journey as well. Like you get into this tutorial cycle and you're just like learning like the basic stuff. Like everything is just like it feels easy, like you already know how to solve a
Yeah.
lot of problems,
It's
but
easy to learn easy things.
yeah. So I think what I learned recently was like there are more opportunities now to actually like find a decent complex problem that you can contribute to in terms of like open source stuff. And this might even improve your motivation, like if you feel like you're not starting from ground zero and like say for example, if you want to set up like a Ruby project now, a Ruby on Rails project, and you have a Windows computer to even set up your development environment, I don't know if like many people survive this stage, but yeah, you go in like
It's
in
like
like
tell me how many times did it happen? You setting up a new project and it's like, well, I can't reasonably code the new project unless I fully set up my IDE first with all of the
yeah,
plugins that I might need. And
yeah,
I need to pick the correct background image for my desktop so that if I minimize my window, I feel inspired. You just start going onto all of these tangents that have nothing to do with the thing you're
exactly.
trying to do because all of them feel like
Mhm.
accomplishments, meaningful in their
Yeah,
own way, but they're actually completely unrelated to what you need to do.
exactly,
So,
exactly.
as the quote goes, you know what you need to do, so why the hell aren't you doing it? I
Yeah.
believe
So
Chris Williamson said that, and I tend to agree with him very much on that.
yeah, that guy. Yeah, I like him. He's our friend. Yeah, Chris Williamson. What's the name of the
Modern
podcast
wisdom,
is
modern
Modern
wisdom. Yeah,
Wisdom. Yeah, yeah. You know what? I like that guy. Anyway, these are the questions that I wanted to discuss with you. And honestly, it's always like interesting to talk about these things with you because you always share your experience. And I appreciate this about it. And this is something I'm also learning from you. I hope I'm doing well, Vasili. You have to tell me, like, because I want to be also learn how to be this generous with my experience. Yeah. So, um, thank you. Thank you very much.
you're welcome, Mo. And if you want
Yeah.
to be more generous with your experience, then you just be. I don't.
Yeah. Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mo, for the time today and the questions. It's been an interesting conversation. And for all of us, all of you who are listening still, I hope you learned something out of this. And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.